today we are discussing the Battle of
Sekigahara.
Sekigahara. And that is 1600s or so?
Yep, exactly 1600.
Wow. All right, so before we start that, though, we need to address anything from the previous one. Do we have anything from the Battle of Hastings?
We actually did not have, I think, any actuallys.
Okay, good.
I think we were pretty good last week. We knew that one. We nailed it down.
Okay, I brought a light upstairs.
It's not on.
It's not on. I'm not using it. I also brought the other computer up here. I got everything up here in the studio, but nothing's working yet. All right, we are going, and it's not bugging me off frame rate. All
right, got that down.
I feel I should probably try to do an official start thing. So I'm going to do the official start thing. We can edit later on YouTube on this thing.
Yeah, we'll have our official start.
All right. So hello, welcome to This Week in History with Will and Mike. Today we are discussing the Battle of Sekigahara. Sekigahara.
Close.
What's a G between friends? All right. So let's just dive right in there, Will.
All right. So the Battle of Sekigahara happened on 21st of October, 1600.
Okay.
It was kind of this climactic battle for control of Japan at the end of what was called the Warring States period, or the Sengoku Jidai is what they call it.
Ooh, we are going to run across a lot of long words that I'm not familiar with and will not know how to pronounce and will may mispronounce.
Yep.
If we do, let us know.
Yep. Don't speak Japanese. Only speak the Anglicanized version of it, and then I just it's kind of spelled phonetically, and we guess.
I know very little. All right, so this is the end battle from, say that again?
It is the end battle, mostly. It was the biggest final battle. There was one after it, but this is the big one for the Sengoku Jidai. And it was to determine who ruled all of Japan.
Ooh, okay.
So to get into why the battle happened in the first place, gotta know where we came from.
Yes.
So originally in Japan, at this time anyway, there was an emperor, and he was kind of more of a figurehead.
Okay.
He had the nominal control of everything, but the real power in Japan was the shogun.
Ah.
So there's a book called Shogun, and then there was a TV series called Shogun, and they're very famous. Same exact stories. But what a shogun is like the political and military leader, mostly the military leader. It was a dictator. Mostly.
I did not know them as political leaders.
Mm-hmm.
You just picture them with the armor and the sword,
mm-hmm.
the hat, the funny armor hat they wear.
Yep, an armored hat.
Right.
That's called a helmet usually.
Helmet?
An armor hat is a helmet.
I feel like a shogun has like a specially weirdly angular, it's like a sideways Spanish one. Sideways conquistador hat.
Kind of, yeah.
All right.
They have these big helmets. So at the time though, being military leader was also to be a political leader. Japan was divvied up into provinces. I don't know exactly how many. They also kind of shifted provinces at the time because they kept fighting. This is the middle of the Warring States period, so everybody's at war. But Japan is ruled by the emperor nominally. The shogun's the real power. Everyone knows it. Even the emperor knows it. It's not even like a secret, like who's really running things.
Do we know who the emperor is at this time?
I don't actually.
Okay.
But it was the same. He was really just not that important. That's unfortunate to say. I probably should have.
Spoilers, I feel like he's not going to factor into this.
He's not at all.
Right.
He's just, they use him as a political tool to say, well, we're right. He's wrong.
There we go. No one likes being a political tool.
Right.
Least of all an emperor.
Least of all the emperor. So there's the shogun, and it was the Ashikaga shogunate was in charge, and a warlord named Nobunaga got sick of him. All right. So Nobunaga does this weird...
What was the other guy's name again?
Ashikaga was
Ashikaga.
the clan.
Chicago.
It was a part of... Chicago. So Chicago is running things, and Nobunaga doesn't like it.
All right.
And what's interesting about Nobunaga is he's got all these weird ideas, according to the other leaders. He likes guns. Guns are a new thing.
Oh, what is this?
This is 1600, a little bit before 1600.
Oh, okay.
When Nobunaga's doing his...
When were guns? About 1600?
About 1600.
Oh, okay.
Well, I mean, the Chinese had firepower or black powder weapons for hundreds of years and used them. In Europe, they were used in the 1400s. and had kind of become a lot more developed. They were starting to get to be the guns that we recognize
Sure.
from like the muskets.
Yeah.
So Nobunaga is this kind of innovator, and he says, well, we can use guns. And the samurai at the time, and the samurais are the warrior caste, and Japan is ruled by a caste structure.
Right.
There's the non-people on the bottom, the eta, and those were like, if you cleaned up dead animals, if you were a butcher, if you worked with leather, if you were an actor. Eta.
Lowest caste.
Yes. And
can you move around between castes? Can you go up? Or are you born into it and stuck into it?
typically, no.
Okay.
Very, 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 very rarely you can get elevated.
Okay.
But then there's the peasant class who only do all the
Wait,
work.
actors are below peasant class?
Actors are below peasants. Peasants make food. Actors do nothing. According to the time. They had a huge disrespect for him. Also, geisha were eta, technically, even though they had property and wealth. So.
All the fun professions.
All the fun stuff.
Worthless.
All right. You had no say in anything. And
Okay.
peasants were considered higher because they made food. And food is very important.
I guess.
Yeah, I guess. And then there's the samurai. And the samurai have different levels within the samurai. There's the samurai that serve, and they're the typical, they do all the fighting. And then there are the daimyo who rule over the samurai. Daimyo is just like a lord.
Okay.
So they rule from their castle. So Nobunaga's a daimyo. He's not a huge daimyo. He's not a big
daimyo.
And he's decided, well, we can use guns, and the samurai, like, that's dishonorable. We don't use guns.
Well.
Spear, and they always carry their sword, and they use their sword if the spear broke or the enemy was too close.
So there were samurai originalists who were like, nah,
no,
they can't.
that's crap. Can't be bothered.
But I mean, technically, probably years ago, they didn't have the swords either. I mean, at some point, you gotta change.
Yeah, you do. And
I'm sounding very pro-gun. I'm not actually pro-gun, so.
I wish we'd go back to swords. It was more fun.
It's true.
More fun.
More personal that way.
Much more personal. You have to really be wanting to kill somebody.
Yeah, I think that's probably a better way of doing things.
Yeah. It becomes easy, and that was actually part of the samurai's complaint. Is they said guns it's easy. Right. You don't have to be close. I mean, they were archers traditionally too,
sure.
But there was skill involved with that there wasn't so much with.
Yeah.
And it was an art style. Everything with samurai fighting was an art style. It was kind of a meditative.
And there's not art.
Not with that. It's too loud. It's smoky. It's gross. That was just the view they had of it. So Nobunaga says, well, the samurai won't use it, but I'll give them to peasants. And that really made the samurai angry. Because now peasants who've never had training can train for a day with a gun and kill a samurai who's trained his whole life to be a weapon. So this is...
I feel there's a parallel to modern day society, but I'm not sure what it is yet. We'll get there.
We'll get there. So a lot of people are very, very opposed to this. But Nobunaga starts... I mean, the peasants love it.
Yeah.
And
guns.
He started getting peasants, like, he gave them positions of authority. One of his most trusted retainers was a guy named Hideyoshi. He's very important during this time. He is so important to Nobunaga, Nobunaga elevates him to become a noble. And that's very unheard of. So Nobunaga fights the shogunate, and he wins. He beats the shogun.
Yeah, he's got guns.
He's got guns, and he's got a very devoted following. And he doesn't start right away by just fighting the shogun. He starts by fighting other daimyo, absorbing their lands, parts of their armies, which gains him esteem, and people think this is a cool dude. Yeah. Starts getting support, and he's on the rise to conquer everything. And then his most trusted retainer murders him.
So much for your trusted retainer.
So much for us, and it wasn't the guy he elevated. It was another samurai. Oh. His name was Mitsuhide Akechi, and he is considered one of the great traitors. He's kind of the Benedict Arnold of Japan.
Yeah.
Depending on which camp you're in, because some people also paint Nobunaga as this villain.
Right, but regardless, it was his.
It was his friend.
His friend, but it's also his superior.
Yep.
It was a betrayal, no matter what.
No matter what way you paint it,
good or bad,
doesn't matter.
Still doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter how bad the guy was. This dude, and he set a temple on fire to kill him. He was at a temple, praying.
Yeah.
It started on fire. Nobody ever recovered the body, so there's some interest about Did he actually die? Dun, dun, dun.
I've seen enough movies to know they didn't die. Did he?
He didn't. He didn't.
Well, I mean,
Well,
he probably has
did.
by now.
He for sure is dead now. He doesn't come back in this story.
Oh no!
So,
but he's out there for a sequel, just in case.
He could have. They've used that in video games. Like,
That's-
he didn't actually die. He came back, and it would be a great story.
Sure.
Plus, he could have maybe retired.
Which is this guy?
That was Nobunaga.
Nobunaga.
Oda Nobunaga is his full
Didn't die.
name. Didn't die.
Maybe died.
Maybe died.
Probably.
Definitely is dead. So he
Okay.
did die at some point.
Yeah.
But maybe not. Maybe he retired. Maybe he became a monk. Not at that temple, because it's on fire.
Maybe he dressed all in black and became a vigilante for the town. Only arriving when the signal would go up in the sky. Yeah.
Anytime they set a building on fire,
That's right.
he'll be there.
For justice.
For justice. To fight for the peasants. So this massive army with all these very famous people in it now is leaderless. There's a little bit of a power struggle, and Akechi's blamed because he murdered him.
Yeah.
He gets killed during this kind of mini civil war, and the guy who ends up on top is the peasant who got promoted.
Oh.
And that's Hideyoshi. Toyotomi Hideyoshi is his full name.
Hideyoshi, from the bottom to the top.
To the top. And he winds up ruling all of Japan.
Ooh. So people can get up in the caste system.
And that was he was an exception. So
Sure.
a lot of people hated him though because he was a peasant.
Yeah.
They're like, this is.
Turns out you can't get up.
Yeah. They were like, this guy's garbage. They never liked him. He didn't care. He ruled Japan. He never had a rebellion succeed against him or anything like that. But he made some missteps that kind of undermined his authority.
Do we know anything other about his early life except that he was a peasant?
Not a lot, because
Okay.
he didn't want to talk much about it. There were theories he could have been a bandit. He could have been a farmer. But he had some skill with weapons, or he wouldn't have been in Nobunaga's army. Or at least he learned
I like to
fast.
picture him as a farmer who happened to be good at weapons.
A lot of people called him the monkey,
Oh.
just to disrespect him.
Oh. I would take that.
And then he took ownership of it.
Yeah.
He's like, oh, well, I'm the monkey then.
I'll
Fine.
take it.
Fine. And he kind of owned it, and he didn't care. But then once he actually got control, he did not tolerate people making fun of him for being a peasant.
Or a monkey.
Or a monkey. He did not tolerate it at all.
Nor should you.
Nor should you.
Yeah.
You shouldn't have to tolerate that. Now, I'm sure he took some extreme measures at some point. Probably had some people beheaded, because that was the thing. But he had he invaded Korea and lost. So that was considered embarrassing and bad. He had some other mismanagement issues where they didn't really like it. So eventually make sure I get my date right here. In 1598, so 2 years before this battle we're going to talk about, he dies.
Oh.
Just natural causes.
Happens
Wasn't like murdered.
No.
But his son, his heir, is only 5.
Okay.
Well, this causes a problem. He can't take over. He's got no authority. He's a
5-year-old.
He's just
Sure. This is not. I mean, that's happened before, though.
Yes.
All right.
So what usually happens in those is you have they basically become a ward of the state, kind of a thing. You've got different people in power saying, "This is what I want to do," and they have these 5 elders as a council that are controlling this kid.
Okay.
The most famous guy in the council is a guy named Tokugawa. Ieyasu Tokugawa. He is considered, at the time, he is unmatched. He fought Nobunaga, and then Nobunaga respected him so much, he hired him on as a retainer, and he was devoutly loyal. And he had around him even some very famous warriors of the time, and it's kind of a who's list of anybody who was important during the Sengoku period. They all are involved in all of this. There's very famous people. So Tokugawa is kind of the head honcho now that Hideyoshi's gone. And he's the only contemporary of Nobunaga with any power left. So he's kind of the de facto leader. He's of this council. And he starts making rules. And some of the other daimyo don't like him making rules. It's not as contentious as having the peasant guy running things, but they still don't like this other guy telling them what.
Sounds like no matter what, no one's going to be happy.
Nobody is. Yeah. It's very similar to any kind of political anything. Anytime you get 2 or more people together, there's going to be a disagreement.
Yes.
Sometimes you only need one person to have disagreements. Then you should probably seek mental health expertise and some help. and which is okay. We're not shaming those people.
Take care of yourself out there. All right. Anyway,
if you're having arguments with yourself,
stop it.
Stop it.
Admit that you're right and that you're wrong.
Yes, and move forward.
Move on with your day.
It's not that serious of a thing to argue. You don't have to do that. So, now we've got, Nobunaga, famous warrior. He's dead. He destroyed the shogunate. Then his heir apparent, his most trusted advisor and loyal retainer, Hideyoshi, dead.
Dead.
Now Hideyoshi's 5-year-old son.
In charge.
5-year-old. So we can't have that. So Tokugawa's like, well, we'll run things. We'll be the guardians. We're his guardians. We're his elders. And they kind of run Japan for a little while. Mm-hmm. But he starts making some rules like, you guys can't have armies. To other members of this council. But he can.
He can. So he's running the council. He's not in charge.
He's not the boss.
But he's for sure laying down rules.
He's laying down rules like he is. I mean, and he has earned the right to kind of do this. And a lot of guys have given him the privilege of doing this because he's very famous for very good reasons. He's a phenomenal general, phenomenal warrior. The only guy who was ever better than him was Nobunaga. That was the only guy who ever beat him. So he's a big deal. But he's overreaching. He is not the shogun. He is not the top dog. Nobody voted for him. Nobody elected him. He wasn't this chosen leader. The kid is. Yeah. So this council is supposed to agree on things. He's making rules for everybody. So obviously, some people really don't like it. Some people completely agree with him. And this causes an east-west divide in Japan. And that's tricky because Japan is, islands. It's not a very big country, but the people at the time were pretty hardy, and their military was very scary. And now it's this developing, using firearms and using, almost it's becoming kind of like modern warfare. You've got, instead of just guys on horseback charging at each other and fighting with some arrows, you've got cavalry, you've got muskets, you've got cannons, you've got guys who ride to battle and dismount to fire their guns and then get back on.
Guns, a game changer.
It's a game changer.
For sure.
It's very different. And then they have, a lot of clandestine operations. Tokugawa worked with 2 ninja clans that were pretty famous at the time. There's some stories written about them. But really all they were expert guerrilla fighters. They were just masters of that. They didn't wear black and throw stars.
The thing I learned recently about ninjas, they wouldn't wear all black.
No.
Because you'd really stick out that way.
Yeah. So it's more like if you see a gray cat and they go out into dusk, you can't ever find them again.
Yeah.
But you can find a black cat. It's very much like that. They used camouflage. But most of the time they would dress like a peasant, depending on because nobody paid attention to peasants.
Yeah.
So they learned to move like a peasant, walk like a peasant, act like a peasant, which generally at the time just meant if you're around a samurai, you just... Okay.
But don't overdo it, because that'll give it away
Don't
as
overdo
well.
Don't overdo it. And at the time, too, samurai could kill you for any reason.
No.
If you weren't a samurai, they could just kill you.
Huh.
Now, you might make another samurai angry if that's one of his peasants.
Yeah.
But
I would assume samurai wouldn't just, abuse that ability. But
most of them didn't.
they sure had that ability.
They had the ability, and that's the scary thing. It's more the fear of it that they could at any time just kill them.
Yeah.
So it kind of bred this life's not so sacred maybe thing for a lot of people.
Okay.
And samurai also saw themselves as disposable weapons. Dying for your master, your lord, was perfectly acceptable, and dishonor meant death.
Oh, okay.
So if you lost, a lot of samurai committed ritual suicide. Seppuku or harakiri. Depends on which version of it.
But not Harry Carey.
Not Harry Carey.
The announcer.
Different guy.
For the Cubs.
Although that'd be, hey, this guy's gonna kill himself. I mean, you kind of sound like
I guess
Harry
it does.
Carey. Maybe that's why they named that.
I don't think so.
I don't think that's right. So, you've got these very opposing views on how to run the country now, right? Well, it doesn't take long for people to really take umbrage with Tokugawa and say, well, we're not going to play with you anymore.
Yeah.
But you can't just take your ball and go home. Because if they just leave, then he definitely gets to run the country.
Right, sure.
He's got the kit.
But also, they're an island. Where are they going to go?
Where are they going to go?
Yeah.
China doesn't want him there. they've just invaded Korea. They
Yeah.
can't really go anywhere, so they have the choice of standing and fighting or doing something about it. So the country splits east and west.
Oh,
Great Western Army, Great Eastern Army, and they
that's
have...
not how I would split Japan.
No. But most maps
It's
of
very
Japan
long
are
and
actually
thin.
kind of tipped.
Oh, is it?
It's kind of tipped.
Okay.
But normally, yeah, it's like you think up and down.
Yeah.
Like up and down.
Yeah.
And they kind of follow the
So
curve.
it's kind of a weird angle there
Yep.
where they divided it.
It was so difficult to divide. Like they call it the Western Army and the Eastern Army,
Yeah.
but there are people from different provinces all over the place that switched sides.
Now, for conceptual purposes, 'cause also maps are all messed up anyway.
Yes.
How big is Japan compared to states that I would recognize?
I think it's about twice the size of Wisconsin, but
Okay.
I'd have to check the square mileage.
That
It's
seems
not
that's
massive.
a rough estimate.
Yeah,
I knew it was smaller.
It's not
and
very
it's an
big.
island nation. I just didn't know quite how big it is.
Yeah, let me just check, because that is an interesting question. Japan square mileage. Let's get some
Interesting question for
information,
Mike.
because this is important. And what's interesting too about it is it's got a lot of mountains, and it's 145,937 square miles.
God,
For
46.
reference, the United States is 3.8 million square miles. It's much bigger. So it says in closest to size. Actually, Japan's the size of California.
California. There we go.
Bigger than that.
And that's roughly the same shape too.
Roughly the same shape, too.
I'll take it.
Just kind of flipped around.
About as big as California.
Not as big as California. It's a nice end cap for our West Coast and a nice end cap for their East Coast.
Yes. Perfect.
Like a little sandwich there.
All right, so the divided east and west.
Divided east to west. And it was actually kind of an interesting thing, because it flips to a lot of the guys who are loyal to Tokugawa are from Nobunaga's mindset. So they're like, yeah, guns are great, and all these new tactics we've learned, they're wonderful. The other side has a lot more traditionalists involved.
Yeah.
And so they don't really want to use guns as much. They do. They still do. So everybody's adapted that this is a thing now.
I don't want to use this thing that will definitely win the battle.
Yes, they're pragmatic.
But I guess we will.
As much as they are all about the honor of things,
Sure.
they are very pragmatic people. Like, well, if we don't have them, and they do, and they can just kind of kill you from here to there, and armor doesn't really work against a gun,
Yeah.
we'd be fighting at a disadvantage. Let's
Load
not play
up.
this game.
Load up, boys. Load up.
Let's go get 'em. So the two sides are kind of facing this massive conflict. They have some skirmishes and some battles, but by 1600, this has climbed to a massive battle. So the armies facing each other. Tokugawa has 75,000 men.
That's a lot.
And they take very accurate measurements for their populations. This is all taken from like
Oh, okay.
detailed writing, detailed accounts from both sides. They're very meticulous about their records. And then the opposing army was 120,000 men.
That's bigger.
It's much larger.
Yeah.
Tokugawa's like,
It's almost twice as big.
it's almost. And he's like, this isn't good. These are not good odds. These aren't what I want. So he starts sending out envoys to all the different daimyo who are part of that army, trying to pull them to his side.
Okay.
He's technically on the right. The other side is technically, according to him, they're rebels. Because he's got the blessing of the emperor,
Yeah, okay.
and he's got the kid. He's got the heir. So he's the good guy, and that's the selling point that he's going with. They're basically, no one's the good guy yet. It's
Right.
whoever wins is the good guy. Like, if they win, he's the rebels now.
Which is what I'm learning more and more about history.
Yep.
Is that the winner gets to be the good guy.
Yep, they're always the good guy. The winner's always the good guy in their mind.
Yes.
Like, history maybe not so kind to them. So he's trying to say, well, when I crush this army, and I will, I'm going to win.
Yep.
I'll give you their land.
Oh, okay.
Or I will give you this much money. Or you will get these things when the war is over.
Now, would you call these
So
negotiations or bribes?
Some of them are bribes.
Okay.
Some of them are negotiations.
Yeah.
Because they start to haggle back and forth.
Yeah.
And he does also include, language about, I'm fighting on the side of justice. I'm fighting for, the rights of the
Look at this-
Toyotomi guys.
Look at this 5-year-old who
Yeah.
is in charge.
That's right, and he's very insistent that he's the right side. Well, the other side is doing the exact same thing, and they're headed by this guy named Ishida Mitsunari, who is another powerful lord. He's a kind of a famous retainer and loyalist to Hideyoshi, and he's been making these accusations. Tokugawa is trying to steal power, just like how Hideyoshi took power after Nobunaga died. So he's kind of comparing him. He's like, that guy didn't earn his spot. He took it from a great man. You didn't earn your spot. You're taking it from the guy who took it from another guy. So you're being sneaky. And this, of course, is a big insult to
be sneaky.
To be sneaky is considered an insult. Samurai is supposed to. It's interesting because they're all about maintaining the face.
Yeah.
And if you lose face, is a huge dishonor. And how you handle losing face is also important. And having things look a certain way, even if that's not what's going on.
Right.
It's all about, you can very politely threaten to exterminate a family. That's okay. If you do it politely.
Oh, please.
Please, thank you.
Thank you.
I will kindly
Manners are very important.
Do you mind if I murder your whole family? I wouldn't.
Thank you.
Oh,
Thank you for asking.
Thank you. And they hide a lot of what the meaning is. There's a lot of double talk. This means this means this. Yes means no sometimes. Nodding and smiling. And they play a lot of games. Like these political games get very intense, but they're all really, really high stakes games because if you mess up, you die. That's it. So Tokugawa has been gambling a lot, and he kind of puts himself out there. And Ishida is doing the same, gambling a lot with his life and the lives of his troops.
Yeah. And
so now they've decided we're gonna duke this out. They finally gathered their forces. We're gonna go to this place.
Did Tokugawa get anyone on his side? Did he convince people over to build up his army?
We'll find out. Because at the time of the battle, he's convinced a few. Mm-hmm. So that's how his army got to be as big as it was. But he's still got a much smaller force.
Okay.
Well, Ishida's guys are kind of spread out. One of his armies is off fighting someplace else. And they get held up at a fortress. This fortress is defended by 200 men. And they fight an army of 15,000.
Wow.
And they hold them up all the way through the end of this main battle. They never get there. They show up and they're like, what happened? But we were on the way. Oh, we were totally going to join the winners, though. Like, whoever's the one.
We're behind you.
We're on your team. I swear. And then the same thing happened to Tokugawa. He had a contingent get stuck at another battle site.
Oh.
And they never showed up because they were too busy fighting. And then they finally got there and like, oh, well, this is dumb.
Sorry, we couldn't help you with your fight.
We were trying.
Fighting.
We were marching, and then there was a little army there, and we had to fight them, and they held us off for long enough.
I feel like I wouldn't want those guys if you can't make it to the fight because you can't get past somebody.
Yeah, especially the guys who got held up by 200 men, and there were 15,000 of them. I'd be very disappointed.
Yeah.
It would be very disappointed.
Was that fort
It was apparently a really well constructed fortress, and it was small enough that it could be manned by just 200 guys defending it. But Japanese fortresses are very interesting. They have a much different design.
Yeah.
Whereas, like European castles, they have those tall walls, those tall towers.
Yeah.
That's not going to work in Japan. They have earthquakes.
Oh.
So those walls would just...
They
just break.
So what were they?
So what they make is a giant mound, and then they case it in stone.
Oh.
So basically, it's like if you took a European castle and then filled it in with dirt. All the way to the top.
One would call that a hill, I would think.
Yeah, it's a hill.
Oh, okay.
But it's fortified. They always would just call them mounds, castle mounds. These things were strong.
Would they live? Where would they live then?
Then they built a tower on top of it.
Oh.
But those were made of lighter materials.
I see.
And they'd also build littler walls, but those walls were maybe 8 feet high.
So to get a castle, you'd have to get past the mountains and the walls there, the way.
And it's all part of it.
Yeah,
it's this massive structure. And the more intricate castles are huge. And you walk down this corridor of death, then you walk down this, and you walk down that, and it looks kind of like a labyrinth from above. And these are massive walls with little walkways on top, so you can send soldiers scurrying from point to point to point, and if they start to get overrun, they just run away to a different place and continue fighting.
Now, the corridor of death wouldn't be for daily use.
No, you had a different route, or you wouldn't use you wouldn't use the scary death parts.
Not every day is like walking through the Mario Castle trying to survive.
You've got to swing across the gator pit.
Yeah.
Avoid the rolling spike logs, stuff like that.
I just wanted to get a muffin from the kitchen.
I was just trying to do my errands this morning. I had business, and I got attacked by this flame-spewing monster. I don't know.
Point of fact, they didn't have those.
They did not have those. But since you said Mario Castle, I thought flame-spewing thing.
So, multiple armies are hung up on little things, and they can't get to the big battle.
They can't get to the big battle. So, but the battle's still going to happen. It's still going to happen.
Look, we planned this battle.
That's right.
We're not waiting for everybody.
We're not waiting for everybody. We got stuff to do. Largely kill each other.
Right.
So that we can determine who's in charge. So, the one side has set itself up in kind of a fortified position. That is, Yoshida's guys have set up in a fortified position. And, I mean, they both were fortified before the start of this. And then the other side decided, we're doing this. So Tokugawa sends his men out to fight him. Well, it rained the night before. It rains a lot in Japan. A lot of rain. So it's very foggy. They literally walk into the other army.
No.
They just do. And they have like a very brief fight and then run away.
Yeah.
Because they're like,
we're not ready.
I didn't know this was going And it's this kind of blind fight.
Yeah.
They don't really know what's going on. And then they start shooting, and then it's smoke and fog, and it just doesn't, it gets really messy. So they run away. Ishida's guys start pressing on. Just hammering away at these dudes.
Don't care about fog.
We know where you are now. Get them. So he sends the army. He's fighting them. Tokugawa's guys are doing their very best to hold this back. And they've done their best to maintain their firearms, despite the rain.
Sure.
But because it rained so much, they didn't have a lot of them that were functioning. It's wet powder, you can't really shoot.
Keep the powder dry.
Powder dry.
As they say.
That's right. I don't think they'd heard that expression.
Oh, powder's new to us.
Powder's
keep it dry?
This is a new thing. What is this? Why it's not making fire?
Note for future. Keep the powder dry.
Powder dry. We should make that a saying so we never forget. Keep powder dry. So there's some gunfire going on, and usually that's enough to break a charge, because samurai level their spear and they just charge.
Yeah.
And it's terrifying, I would imagine.
Yeah.
Bunch of armored dudes with, and it was predominantly men. There may have been some women warriors.
Sure.
Nobunaga had one that was kind of a legendary figure. It's not known for sure if she's real or how much she was engaged in the wars.
Got a name on it?
Lady No, N-O-H. That was one of his either concubines or wives. Or
Lady No sounds like an awesome character.
Yeah, she was a very interesting person. But she's been kind of made as more of a legendary character.
Sure.
So she was actually a ninja, and she was actually a this, and she was this. But she was politically savvy, and she was always with him. So she may have actually fought. And women samurai were, there were samurai women that were from the caste of samurai.
Oh,
but they didn't necessarily fight. They were somewhat capable. Many of them were trained how to defend their homesteads and things like that. But they were not the warriors. They ran a household.
They ran the household.
They ran it like...
So they use like a big sword for cooking.
Yep. Probably not. Have the husband come in with the big sword. He did that. They were very good with a little knife.
Oh, a little knife.
Yeah. Most of them carried one. Usually So while the men would commit suicide by slitting open their belly.
Yeah.
And then hopefully having a second behind them to finish the job. Women just stab themselves in the throat.
Oh.
Much cleaner.
Yes.
Much less painful.
Yes.
You're done. Still sounds horrible. I would... The way you'd have to psych yourself up to do that, just... Yeah! Can't imagine. And that was a very common way of dying, was killing yourself. Suicide was not...
Really?
It wasn't considered taboo.
I figure you learn, if you're good at it, you're just either naturally good at it.
Mm-hmm.
Not a thing you can practice.
You can't. You really can't.
You gotta be ready for this.
If you screw up...
Yeah.
I whiffed. I didn't hit anything vital. Now I just get this knife in my throat. I guess I'll do it again.
All right, kids, don't kill yourself out there.
Don't do that.
It's already difficult.
Yeah. Very difficult. Why even try? It's so hard.
Yeah.
Why even bother? It's so hard. Just wait. The world will take care of it.
It'll be fine.
It'll be fine, and then you'll get old, and then you'll...
We all get killed by something sooner or later.
Yeah, eventually it'll come along.
Don't worry.
Don't worry. Don't rush into it.
This is a great pep talk for those considering suicide at all.
If you are, there is a hotline to seek help. We're not making light of suicide. We're just talking about the strength of will that it would take to do that kind of suicide.
I mean, we are kind of making fun of suicide, but no one in particular.
Not one in particular, and
just
not making fun of the reasons for it.
All right, I've lost track of where we are in this battle. We
just started. Got fog.
They one side said, forget it, charge forward anyway.
They charged forward into Tokugawa's guys. Tokugawa's men are fighting back, but despite their best efforts, they're kind of struggling with pressing them in.
Yeah, and they're the smaller force as well.
They are already the smaller force. So seeing that he's got the advantage, Ishida has this detachment off to the side, and he calls them into a charge. There's 15,000 men. From Ishida. Mitsunari, the Tokugawa's rival.
Yeah. I wrote his last name down. Mitsuari.
Yes. Technically, Ishida is the last name.
Oops.
So Japanese names are reversed. The household name is first.
All right, so we're calling him though Ishida.
All right. So he's the mastermind rivaling Tokugawa's the mastermind of his army.
Yeah.
But each guy has sub-commanders, and they all brought their own men. That's how it worked.
Everyone bring your own guys.
Bring your own men.
Bring some donuts too.
Bring food. Bring snacks. It's going to be a long fight. Okay. So by noon, they're really embroiled in this fight, and he says, "All right, guys, get him." Calls in his 15,000 men that are kind of set off to the side, and they're going to come in and sweep the flank.
Get them.
And they don't move.
Oh.
And he's just kind of like, "Hey, kill them." And they just sit there and wait. And it's revealed they're in negotiations with Tokugawa the whole time. So they're just sitting there waiting. And Tokugawa's like, "Yeah, this is the part where you switch sides now and you stab him in the back during the fight."
Oh, so neither they say.
And then they just kind of go, "Nope," and they don't do anything. So Tokugawa gets sick of it. He signals them like 3 more times.
Yeah.
And finally just tells his men to shoot at him. It's kind of you're either in the fight and you're helping me, or I'm treating you like I'm treating them.
So both Ishida first one, "Hey, come here," and they didn't. And then Tokugawa said, "Yeah," and they didn't.
And they didn't. And they're sitting on their horses, just kind of do 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 do.
Well, I would have shot at them too.
I would have shot at them too. So finally they get shot at, and they go, "Okay. We were just playing. All right, we're doing it. Calm down, Tokugawa." So they turn around and they charge back the way they came into Ishida's army.
Oh, okay.
Unfortunately for them, it is held by a particularly tough group of guys that are in a dug-in, fortified position with lots of guns.
Oh.
And they shatter the charge before it even gets to them. It does almost no damage. So it's this army charging down a hill into the most fortified, defended position.
Well,
and they just get obliterated.
I can't blame them for not charging in the first place.
Yeah, I probably would have thought about a different way of approaching.
Well, maybe they would have had a better chance.
They might have. So, I forget which daimyo is in charge of this wing of the army, but he's very good at what he's doing.
Apparently.
And he's just like, "Nope, you guys tried to stab us in the back. That's not acceptable. Fire!" And they just unload on him. And the way they would do that is they'd have like ranked fire. So you'd have one guy on the knee, then a guy behind him, and then you'd have as many guns pointing in one direction as humanly possible, and you just fire. They didn't try to keep a continuous thing. It was a shock tactic. It was like getting hit by a wall of cavalry, but really far away. And then when they were done shooting, they'd step back, and then maybe another division would come forward and shoot.
Right.
Or they'd try to reload. But they're also samurai, so if you get close, they just pull out a sword or they pull out their spear, and you're going to have a brutal fight anyway. But there's all this smoke now, and it stinks, and it scares the horses, and it's not fun. Because this is before they invented like smokeless.
Normally battles are so much fun.
They're so much fun. They're so clean.
Yeah.
They're so clean, so nice. So everything's kind of chaotic now. They've shattered this charge. Tokugawa's like, well, that didn't quite pan out.
Nope. Good plan, though.
But it was a really good plan.
Sure.
And it's still an advantage. Now they have 15,000 less men on their side. And the survivors from this charge do rejoin the army. Like, they go back and they're like, okay, maybe we won't try that again. But
it's fine. We're gonna try a different plan.
Yeah, going around. But this is the problem is that this is as tough as these guys are that have broken this charge, there aren't a ton of them. There are a few hundred against thousands. And they're anchoring the flank of the army. Well, eventually they get overwhelmed and they have to retreat. This is just a hopeless situation. And retreating in battle is okay. You're falling back to fight again.
Sure.
You don't necessarily have to just fight to the death. You do in some situations, because it's the only option, or because it's a matter of honor or something like that. Yeah. These guys are like, no, we'll fall back, we'll reconnoiter, we'll be able to reconfigure things. But this is like the toughest part of the army, and it's starting to fall. So the rest of the army soon starts to go that way because they've broken the flank. And once you crush the flank of an army, you can just roll up the rest of the army.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what Tokugawa's guys do. They break through these guys, this is the strongest point, and they just go right up the army.
Yeah.
So Ishida sees what's going on and kind of gives the signal where, well, we're going to try to reform. And it doesn't happen. He tries to rally the army, they don't rally.
Oh, no.
He's still waiting on some reinforcements. He's still waiting for other guys to get committed to the fight. And they, at the end of the battle, 22,000 men switch sides.
Oh. So now how would they tell, how can you tell who's on whose side?
So a lot of different groups had flags. They'd wear them on their backs.
Okay.
And they'd rally around they also had similar armor colors. It was kind of like how knights had heraldry.
Okay.
You had your family crest on your armor.
Yeah.
So they had like a style, and they would try to have everybody in their group look like that.
So how would they switch then?
They basically just said, no. It was a very, sometimes you died while you were trying to switch sides because you're like, no, I swear to God, I'm going to
I gotta repaint the family crest.
Well, and it would be the whole, because each daimyo's guys have their look, they have their style. But, so it wasn't like, okay, now we switch sides, so we're going to dress like your guys. They're still dressed like their own men. So it's like, this lord's guys all wore blue. This lord's guys all wore black. This guy, they had, because samurai armor is very ornate. All of it is.
I would imagine switching sides would be very difficult.
It would be difficult.
And complicated.
It is. So the way that the armor was made is you had to put a lacquer over everything. So it's very fancy looking. It's very colorful.
Ooh.
And it was because it's so wet in Japan and so hot.
Oh.
The armor would rust if you didn't do that.
Okay.
So you have to take very good care of it. But it also allows you to kind of make things uniform. So you're like, well, and then everything under it is silk. Because that's the only cloth you can wear and not die in Japan. It's also, again, really hot, really humid.
Plus silk in your body.
So you have silk. Plus silk is tough. It's a very tough fabric. It's not going to maybe stop an arrow or something, but it might slow it down. It'll help. It'll help some of the wounding.
Sure.
It's durable. It's pretty. It's soft.
And pretty.
It's important.
I like to feel pretty and soft.
They were not only pragmatic, but very stylish.
Yeah.
Compared to medieval armies, or other armies like in Europe at the exact same time, they're very formal, but very well-disciplined, very well-equipped. So they're kind of fancy looking. And because they're kind of fancy looking, you can make all of your guys kind of look the same.
Okay.
So they're all wearing, they have flags or whatever, and they all basically just turn around and face the other way if they switch sides. Switching sides wasn't super common in the middle of a battlefield.
Yeah, it seems really hard.
And it's also risky because you gotta kind of organize. So it would be usually like the daimyo in charge of this group or one of his men would ride up and go, no, we're changing sides.
Cool.
We switch sides.
Seems like a good way to get close to somebody, though.
Yeah, and stab them in the back.
Yeah.
Which also happened. There were false retreats and false switches and all that. And I mean, we saw the one clan basically was like, who really wants us to join their side? And they just kind of weren't going to do anything. I think the general consensus is they were just going to wait for the battle to get done and then say, yeah, we totally We picked the right side. But they were on the field.
Right.
And just kind of...
Too close. Can't get too close if you're going to be wishy-washy.
Yeah, you can't do that. So I actually think it's funny that Tokugawa called their bluff. He's like, fine, I'm just going to shoot you then. Fine.
Right.
Fine. I'm already outnumbered. I'm already getting my butt kicked.
I've chosen your side for you.
Yeah, you're going to pick right now. Yeah. We had a deal. Meh. It kind of makes me think, what if Ishida had shot at them first?
I don't know.
Maybe they would have stayed on his side.
Sure.
But I think possibly, too, he was like holding out for a better bargain.
Right.
You know, well, you said I'd get this.
Yeah.
But there wasn't a lot of communication. Tokugawa was busy. He's trying to fight a battle. He wasn't doing very well at the time.
Here's my current offer. A bullet to your face.
A bullet. Many bullets if you continue. There's more to come. And that was kind of the thing, too, is he shot at them, and then he lined up more fire muskets, and was just like, we're going to do it again. This time we're going to aim a little lower. Instead of shooting over you maybe, or shooting at you, we're going to hit you, and we're going to kill as many of you as humanly possible. So they kind of caught between. It was not a smart move.
Right. In retrospect.
I mean, maybe they had a bigger plan.
Yeah.
But if you're going to switch sides, you got to commit. You got to commit.
Just don't get too close to the battle.
Either be like, yeah, my army got held up at the castle.
Yeah. That's a good lie.
That's a great lie. We got held up.
Do you see the traffic on the I-90? Man.
It was just, it rained last night and the wagons got stuck.
You saw the fog this morning?
Yeah, we walked the wrong way. Okay, we walked the wrong way for 6 miles, and by the time we figured out we're going the wrong way,
what did we miss?
And the fog cleared up. We came back, and you guys were done. I didn't know. Sorry.
We'll help clean up the dishes.
It's okay. Well, yeah. Sorry about that. That's my dishwasher.
That's good. That's nice.
That's a good dishwasher.
It's important to do after a battle.
You gotta wash the dishes. Yeah. So that's a very common part of battles, is dishwashing. Yep. So this battle is lost. Most of Ishida's daimyo are either captured or killed. Tokugawa doesn't lose a single commander.
Oh.
Which is pretty impressive.
Yeah.
And these guys are not standing back watching. These are samurai. You fight. They're fighting.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe some of them have guns, but for the most part, they're on a horse, riding around, charging their guys up, swinging a spear, swinging a sword, fighting. That was what was expected. Obviously, if you're older, you don't have to be on the front lines as much. And if you're like the ultimate commander of the group, you might not be engaged.
Right.
Because you kind of have to see what's going on. So Tokugawa maybe was sitting back on a hill going,
Sure.
That way. You go that way. No, not that way. That way. What are you doing? And then you ride around. And it's a very exhausting mentally and physically kind of thing to do.
Well, someone's got to be in charge.
Yeah. And it's not like nowadays if you really need somebody to know something, you just call them or you radio.
Right.
You have they do everything by flag and hand gesture and just riding up and telling people what to do. So Tokugawa sends out the rest of his cavalry to just finish the job and ride down anybody who's not surrendered and who's still putting up resistance. Won't switch sides. But yeah, the spirit of the army is broken, and once things start going badly, the rest of the turncoats are like, okay, we're done. We quit. Yep, we switched to your side.
I think you made your point.
Got your point?
Thank you.
We would like to not anymore. So at the end of the day, the total deaths range from 4,000 to 10,000 on Tokugawa's side, 8,000 to 32,000 on Ishida's side, plus desertions. So his army is just shattered.
Yeah. They
catch Ishida, bring him before Tokugawa, and he has him publicly executed.
Ooh.
With proper honors, he doesn't have him like actually being disemboweled isn't considered the worst. They actually crucified people. That was a thing there. It's a universal punishment. People just did it. But that was reserved for Eita and the worst criminals.
But he was publicly executed.
Yep. Well, yeah, I mean, in front of as many samurai as there were in the room at the time. And yeah, he had him killed. Yeah. Didn't let him commit seppuku.
Oh.
Don't think he asked. That's not really recorded if he's like, can I just kill myself? I'm pretty sure he was spinning and flipping the guy off, essentially. But
did not take it well.
He didn't take it well. He wasn't happy about losing. And he didn't think that he was in the wrong, so he didn't feel probably the need to kill himself.
Right.
And he just lost a battle. That wasn't the worst thing in the world. It was
Well,
pretty bad.
Pretty bad day.
Pretty bad day for him.
And then to end the day by being killed.
He was executed. And it
Even
was,
worse.
yes, he was specifically executed. Tokugawa was like, nah, he didn't die in battle. We're going to kill him.
Here we go.
So that's how we deal with this. Kill him. So since Tokugawa has completely crushed the Western Army, he is the boss now. He's
of East and West.
Of East and West. That's his official declaration. He is ironclad ruler of Japan.
Yeah.
According to him. He's got a few things that he has to tie up still. Hideyoshi's son is not physically in his presence, so he's still a rallying cry to be used to fight from.
Do you know how old the son was?
Well, the son was 5. That was a 5-year-old.
Oh, that's a
5-year-old. Well, now he's 7.
Still too young.
Still too young. Doesn't have a lot of say in anything.
Yeah.
But his mother is very controlling.
Oh.
And doesn't really want to listen to Tokugawa.
Uh-oh.
So she gathers a bunch of still loyal retainers that loved Hideyoshi, that are very loyal to the cause, and a lot of the survivors from Sekigahara join up. And they go to this massive castle called Osaka. And Osaka is still physically around. And to give you an idea how strong Japanese castles were, when Hiroshima and Nagasaki were bombed with the atomic bombs at the end of World War II, the castles were destroyed. The mounds are still there.
Oh.
That's how strong these bases are. There's these towering things. Some of them are 50 feet high, maybe taller. I think in Osaka, the walls are 100 feet high, almost.
Wow.
It's like a mountain. It's a man-made mountain. And then you just build some walls on the very edge of it to make it even harder to climb up. And it's, if it can withstand an earthquake, it can withstand anything.
Barely a nuclear bomb.
Yeah, it's right. Can't kill him. And this is the last holdout. And 3 years after Sekigahara, Tokugawa finally gets sick of that family being a thorn in his side.
The Hideyoshi's
wife and his kid.
The kid.
Yes.
The rightful heirs of things.
Yes.
All right, Tokugawa's like, no way.
Nope. Done with this. Done with this nonsense. I control the emperor. I control this.
I did all the hard work.
I did all the things. I've been fighting with Tokugawa. I've fought with Nobunaga. I fought for Hideyoshi. And I'm done with this crap.
Yeah.
Doing all the work. I'm done with this. So Tokugawa gets a big force together that's in the hundreds of thousands. It's 150,000 men, I think, by the height of it. And he besieges Osaka Castle. But this thing is massive. This is a huge complex. So it's not like you just surround it. You can't really. It's huge. And just taking one part of it doesn't mean that you take the whole thing.
Yeah.
This is a massive undertaking. So he gets into some psychological warfare.
But he has everybody, though. He has the whole country.
He has the vast majority of the country.
To get right on that little thing. Right.
So he hammers this thing, eventually gets them to make a truce, says, you get to keep your province. You've surrendered. You can still collect an income from it.
You're fine.
Just stop.
Stop, and I'm in charge.
Stop. You don't get an army anymore. Then that's it.
Okay.
One thing he leaves out of the negotiations is he's also going to demolish the castle.
Oh.
Because it's another. He's just
right.
Every time there's a problem, people just go to Osaka. It's also very close to the capital.
Okay.
So it's a constant threat, and it's massive. It could house 100,000 men.
Oh, that's a big place.
That's how big this thing is, and it's still standing today. You can still see it.
Oh, spoilers!
Spoilers. So his guys start tearing down the walls, and the people there are like, "We live here.
Hey,
you can't tear down our house.
Busy living.
What are you doing?" So they start calling in Ronin, who are wandering samurai, who don't have a master, who aren't really loyal to anybody, but they're loyal to coin. And these guys, all they do is fight. They're very good at it. If all you do is that, that's not a thing where you can be like, I've been doing it the same way for 30 years and I still don't know what the heck I'm doing.
Right.
If you suck at fighting, but your livelihood is fighting, you die very quickly.
Yes. You advance or...
you either, yes, you're at least handy with a sword. And that's typically all the Ronin had. They still just had their swords. They were poor, usually, because most samurai relied on having an income from peasants and farming and all this other stuff.
Right. These guys just
wander around killing things
Yeah.
for pay. Sometimes if they couldn't get paid, they just resort to banditry. Ronin had a very negative look. People did not like them a lot because they were for sale, and money is dirty.
Oh, I see.
Money was not considered clean. I don't think merchants were considered eta, but they were close.
Really?
They were sub-samurai. So samurai never dealt with money, ever. Samurai didn't pay anybody. They didn't do any of that. They had the merchant class do it.
Oh, I see.
Samurai
dirty their hands with
they
money.
didn't dirty their hands with it. And that was part of the woman's job in the household, was to handle that task.
Okay.
It wasn't considered dishonorable for the household to do it, but she was, she would be the mastermind for how to deal with all this stuff. Got to keep the servants fed, got to keep everybody going, got to keep the finances up. They were the accountants. They tended to be very bright and then also have to do a lot of overseeing and making sure everything's done. So they had this, there was a lot of respect there. They just didn't think women should be out fighting. That was their culture.
Right.
Not making a judgment.
I don't know. I don't think anyone should be out fighting.
Yeah, if you don't have to fight, don't fight.
All right, so who hired the mercenaries?
So the people who get hired by the mercenaries are Hideyoshi's wife.
Yes.
His son's mother.
Still causing trouble.
I'm trying to
castle
remember her name.
Osaka.
I think it was Dona. What's her name?
I don't know.
I didn't know either. But she was trouble. She was a lot of trouble. It's kind of the classic, she was a Karen.
Oh.
She was kind of a Karen. She was a manipulative, I'm going to speak to the manager about this type, but also controlled every aspect of her son's life.
Yeah.
And she would convince him to do things that maybe weren't for his best interest.
I feel like she had the rights, though, here.
She definitely thought she did, but there's a lot of questions about whether any of those people actually had any rights in the first place.
Right.
Because Nobunaga technically didn't have like a crown.
Oh, okay.
He wasn't like a shogun. He was just a warlord.
Yeah.
And then Hideyoshi just kind of took over after him. Well, you're just the warlord's lieutenant. Now you're the warlord.
Right.
There's not really any official.
No, you're the wife of the.
And now she's the wife of that.
Yeah.
And to everybody, she's the wife of a peasant.
Yeah.
And a dead guy. You are a widow. Your job is, you don't have any say in anything. If you're a widow, you don't have any say. You go and retire. That's it. That's what you do. That was what they thought she should be doing.
Right.
Retire. So she's manipulating this child, basically, into constantly being a thorn in Tokugawa's side. Tokugawa has enough, bombards the living hell out of this castle, which doesn't really do anything.
Osaka.
Because it's so strong. So he starts being sneaky about where he shoots, and rather than try to obviously like hit the walls, which are earthquake proof, Cannon's not really going to do much. He starts arcing shots into like the temple.
Oh, okay.
Almost kills the kid. Misses his head by like an arm length.
Watch out for arrows.
Watch out for everything. But this is a cannon. He's
watch out for cannonballs.
He's shooting cannons at him. And finally, though, there's a fire that breaks out, and the Toyotomi family dies off. Tokugawa wins. And it's not sure who started the fire. Billy Joel's sitting in the background.
Billy Joel did not start the fire.
I didn't start this. I'm over here. But it was thought maybe people wanted to switch sides. They were tired of this holdout.
Yeah.
There's a lot of...
Isn't that how the guy died in the first place?
Exactly, it is.
It
might have been the same guy. Some pyromaniac just starting fires. That's a good question. Yeah. Could it have been the same guy?
Could have been the same guy.
So Tokugawa has finished this off. 1603 is when this final battle at Osaka Castle happens. And he becomes shogun. And he establishes this new shogunate that lasts until 1868.
Ooh, that is almost 300 years.
Almost the 300-year span. He doesn't make himself the shogun, though. He does the smart thing. He's old. He's going to retire. He makes his son the shogun.
Ah.
And then it becomes a family thing. They control the emperor, they control the shogunate, and it lasts until 1868. And that's when we see the events in The Last Samurai.
Which I have not seen.
I recommend it. It's a very fun movie. It's an interesting take on some real events.
Yeah.
And that's, again, it turns into the Tokugawa was not a traditionalist, right? He's guys used guns and all this.
Yeah.
Once he takes over, he like bans the use of firearms and doesn't want foreigners involved in anything, and restricts who can carry weapons a lot of the time, and he takes some very big steps backwards.
Was he responsible for the isolation of Japan in the kind of the modern era there?
So
1600 to 1800.
It was actually, they kind of just stagnated.
Yeah.
Until the 1800s. And then they had what they called the Meiji Restoration. And that was upgrading into the modern time.
Which we will not talk about today.
We won't talk about today, but it's important to know what happened because Tokugawa just basically puts a lock on advancing of culture, weapons, and style. We are this. We are samurai. We run everything. And it's kind of this tyrannical regime. It evolves into different things. And finally, the newer government eventually changes all of that. They get rid of the shogunate. No more shogun. The emperor runs things as a council. And it becomes a much more modernized country.
In the 1800s.
In the 1800s. Okay. But it takes a very long time to get there.
Almost 300 years.
But for almost 300 years, this guy his family has an iron-fisted control over it. Of the whole country. And the only reason it starts to shift is because the U.S. and other Western powers show up with warships and they're like, we would like to trade.
Yeah.
Trade with us.
I've heard about that. I've heard that story. All right. So in my the part that I know about history is I know that Japan had been rather isolationist for a chunk of time,
and that was from that.
This guy.
Yep.
Well done.
Yeah. So that's why that battle's so important. Puts him in charge, makes them an isolationist country for a very long time, which was so weird because his kind of mentor, Nobunaga, was all about importing culture and trading with people. He let parts of Japan become Christian. He was fine with it. He was open it up.
Huh.
But that was probably why there was such a harsh pushback. Tokugawa was like, nope, don't want that. Too much change, too fast, not good for me and my power.
Strange how that works.
Mm-hmm.
When I'm in charge, I want things to be a little less.
He's a revolutionary until he's not. Now he's the boss.
All right.
So that was...
We've used up our hour of time.
That's our hour of time.
I feel I learned a lot about Sekigahara. Sekigahara.
I'm maybe not pronouncing it right.
More I've learned about Tokugawa.
Yep.
The fella.
Very interesting guy.
Yeah. All right. Well, that was delightfully fun.
Yeah.
And I'd love to keep talking about it, but we are out of time.
We are out of time.
I got other things to do today.
Yeah, so much stuff.
We are going to be back here next week.
Same bat time, same bat channel, different bat subject.
Yes. What are we talking about next week?
Next week, we're going to talk about the Peace of Westphalia, which happened in 1648 in Germany.
The feast?
The Peace
of
Westphalia. Did I say feast?
I heard feast, but
I might have said feast.
The Peace of Westphalia.
And that was October 24th, and that was the end of the 30 Years' War in Europe. And so we're finally not actually going to be talking about a battle. We get to talk about a peace.
Hey!
But we're going to talk about the war because it's kind of a big deal.
Yeah, you need the context.
We got to know why this is important. We got to know exactly what happened, some of the key participants, and if there were some long-term effects maybe from it. We'll find out next week.
We will find out next week. So tune in next week. This one, the Battle of Hastings from last week, it just got up on YouTube if you want to check that out there.
Click like, share it with people. Subscribe to the channel. Eventually we'll be adding stuff.
The sunlight is slowly taking Will away.
I'm fading into light.
It's amazing.
It's kind of awesome. It's a neat trick I learned when I went to Vegas.
If you have any corrections for us, throw them in the comments.
Yep.
And otherwise, we'll just see you next week.
Yep. Thanks, guys.
Thanks for joining us. Bye-bye.